Welcome to Turbo Cider Take-2, really simple cider. Now, my first attempt at turbo cider got derailed a bit because the more I read about the different recipes, the more I got sidetracked in terms of changing the plan. And ultimately, it all took a long time. So this time I'm going to stick to a set recipe. And that recipe is also going to be one that's a little bit stronger. We're going to add a little bit of sugar at the beginning in order to actually bring up the alcohol content too. Now, the alcohol content isn't the be all and end all, but my first attempt was a little light. So the other thing is I wanted something that would be ready relatively quickly. I started to lose patience with my first attempt, and while patience is really important, and I think the plan in the future is to have a couple of these on the go, I'm still in the early days, and so actually I was starting to get a bit impatient about it. So I'm going to follow a plan this time that literally is going to be, we'll sort of go through the recipe in a second, but it basically is 300 grams of brewing sugar, 4 litres of apple juice and some yeast, and that is it. We're then going to put that away for about 14 days and let that ferment, and after around about 14 days, hopefully what we'll start to see is it starting to clear. At that point, there is a little bit of a optional in my plan, depending on what we see. Obviously, if it still seems to be fermenting, we'll leave it a little bit longer. And if it does seem to sort of start to get to that final point, what I'm going to do is then rack it for another sort of 3 to 5 days to let it clear. And at that point, we are on day 19 or thereabouts, and we will have some cider that I can taste. So fingers crossed. At that point, we will also sort of take that, and I'm going to plan to carbonate or maybe sweeten, but a few bottles of the cider. So effectively, if I decide to carbonate, that typically means sort of carbonate in the bottle for a couple of weeks, put them away, and then a day in the fridge. So maximum for this whole process is 34 days or thereabouts, plus or minus a bit, depending on what happens along the way. So that is the plan, and I am going to stick to it rather than deviate all over the place like I did first time. Fingers crossed. Just testing the product. I did do a little bit of science behind the sugar. So in order to end up with a cider that is going to be around about the 9% mark, we needed to sort of sweeten it, we needed to sort of add some sugar to the mix. And we needed to add about 300 grams. 300 grams will take the specific gravity from my starting point in apple juice alone of 1.044, sorry. And we wanted to raise that up about to the 1070 mark. And that should give us a nice cider sort of in terms of strength. This is my first attempt at the maths, so we'll see if that actually works, but that is the logic behind 300 grams of sugar. Here we go. Heating up a little bit of the apple juice so I can dissolve the sugar in a moment. This has all been sanitized, so we're ready to put the apple juice in the fermenter. Our fermenter today is as simple as a 5 litre bottle of water. The bottle of water costs around £1.20, cheap and easy fermenter. 2 litres of apple juice are in, and we're going to move to the sugar. We just want to dissolve that in the apple juice, and then we'll add it to the fermenter. Insta dissolved. How about that? This is brewing sugar. Right, I'm just going to let that cool for a second before I add it to the fermenter. Not forgetting our yeast, I'm going to pitch in half a packet, that left over from attempt number 1. So here's the thing, so I had a little bit of a problem in so much as the sugar and apple juice mix was a little bit too hot to just sort of to pour in the fermenter. Didn't want to harm the yeast that I'd already put in there. So I concluded I'd create this little cool bath to pop the pan in, and as you can see the temperature's just going down nice and easy. Despite the fact I've been sort of sitting around for the last 15 minutes and it's barely moved, I've just moved it into this, you know, it's not even really an ice bath. I've got one ice pack there, but it's just cold water from the tap, and the sort of temperature's just sort of dropping down. As soon as it gets down, I'm going to check, but I think around about 30 degrees, that will be fine, and I will put it in the fermenter. 4 litres of apple juice and yeast and 300 grams of brewing sugar. Time to shake vigorously. Multiple reasons for this. First one is oxygenating is a good thing, and this is certainly doing that. Second is making sure all of those ingredients are nicely mixed together. In a second, we'll do the hydrometer reading. I know what I'm aiming for. We'll see if my maths was right. New toys. Six, 4. Maybe 1065. When I calculated the 300 grams of sugar, I was aiming for around 1070. So actually fairly close, though I did give myself a bit extra just in case. So we've ended up at 1065, which I still think will put us in the higher range. We'll see when we get there. I could, I could add a little bit more sugar. It's still early, and in fact, there's a bit of a gap at the top. I could add a bit more juice. So there's lots of things I could do to bring that up, but actually I'm not going to. I'm just going to go see what the results are based on these calculations, and we can always adjust a little bit next time based on experience. Take 15. Other than giving it one last shake, it's time to put the bubbler in. This was all sterilised, so I'm not going to waste any. So this is my homemade bubbler. Put that in there. This is a bit of sanitizer. Oh. So, time, put this in a warm, dark place for 7 to 14 days. First few days, probably going to give it a bit of a swish, but also just keep my eye on it. First time round, it was very active, and it did mean I had to clean and change the airlock on that a couple of times, so I'll just keep my eye on it, but we seem to be ready to go.